911, what is your emergency?
Units respond code 3 to a 1050 on the highway. Vehicles are blocking multiple
We're en route
lanes
to the
of travel.
hospital. Patient is currently having
We've got a
cardiac
4-alarm
arrest and has
fire
been
here.
intubated.
Send
Protesters
additional
are outside
trucks.
of City Hall and they are not complying with our
Out on
orders
1,
to
hold the
disperse.
air.
In a rapidly changing world for first responders where it seems that every day the rules and norms are changing, there is one voice you can count on to give you the latest in emergency news. That is Lifeline. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 podcast with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I am your co-host, Gary, and today we have a very special guest with us today. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Sherree.
Sherree's been with the department now for 4.5 years.
Yes.
And we asked her to come on, and she graciously accepted because she has a somewhat unique story to tell in terms of her training and how that went. Sherree started at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, which started in March of 2020, if y'all can remember back that far.
Yep.
And we kind of just wanted to get her on to see how that went for her and what that felt like. So, Erica, take it away.
Dun, 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 dun. Not to make you nervous there, Sherree, at all. Gary and I were talking. We're trying to figure out, what episode would be most interesting. And I thought about your story because it's really, it's definitely unique. Well, when I say unique here, because I'm sure you aren't the only person that had to start training when the whole country shut down. But I don't know anyone who had to do it at an agency the size of ours, because Austin, we're not we're not a one-stop shop.
No.
We do a few things at a time. We take over 1 million calls, I think, right?
1.2 million.
1.2. That's insane. So I just really think that your story would be inspiring to anyone who wonders if they can do it, because you had challenges unlike very many at all. First, why become a first responder? Why 911? Why dispatch?
Well, I was a stay-at-home mom for about 4 years, and it was just time for me to go back to work because my kids were old enough to drive and do all the things to get themselves to school. And I watched my cousin in August of 2019 graduate and become a state trooper.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah. And so that got me thinking about first responders. Mm-hmm. And so in December, I started applying at agencies. And I think it was the first week in January when I applied with APD. And I heard right back the same day.
That's insane.
Yeah. Had you ever done anything like any dispatching work or law enforcement work before then?
No, in 2015, I had left my job as an assistant manager at an apartment complex.
Okay.
I had done that for a couple of years, and I loved it. I thought about going back to it. One thing that intrigued me about this job was the shift work. When my husband told me, when we discussed me going back to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, was just dreadful to me.
Yeah.
And so I just really liked the idea of the shift work.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids were older, so I didn't mind missing the holidays.
Sure. Yeah, because you're currently assigned to night shift, right? So you work overnights.
Overnights, yes. And I love overnights because that allowed me to adjust my sleep schedule during the day. So I never missed anything with the kids' concerts or marching, anything. If awards were in the mornings, I can go to that and just sleep later. Mm-hmm. Or I can go to bed right when I get home and then go to their marching contests in the evenings.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so the application process was, fairly routine for you because, as you said, it was in January of 2020. What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
And so you went online and put in your application. They did the background investigations, made sure you were a solid character to work here, sent you your offer letter in early, you said January?
Yeah, so I got my offer letter, I do believe, like maybe the beginning of February.
Okay.
I mean, at the same time, I was scheduled to start at the end of February, but they asked if it was okay if I started on February 18th,
Okay.
rather than at the end. So, and I was able to do that.
Okay. So you get your offer letter, your start date, February 18th. You start going into the classroom training. Mm-hmm. You do that for 4 weeks.
Yes, about 4 weeks.
Okay.
But wait, if I'm not mistaken, so were you a class of one? Or?
Yes, and I was during the application process when we had to go show up for a personality test. There
Okay.
were 7 of us.
Okay.
Now I don't know how many were going to be call takers and dispatchers, but I kind of I think about each week we had to do something where we
Right.
had to show up here, and then those numbers kept dwindling.
Yeah.
And I ended up being the only one
Wow.
starting in class, and she had the instructor had told me I might have been her first time to be one person class, or it
Wow.
hadn't happened very often at all.
That's crazy because if I'm remembering right, I don't recall any one person classes before COVID. And so if this was February, then COVID hadn't
Kicked up yet.
not really. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we had started to hear rumblings.
Yeah, there were news reports and such.
Yeah.
A nameless terror from the east.
Exactly. And I think nobody thought that it was going to be what it was going to be. At least I didn't. I don't think I'm alone in that.
I don't think anybody thought
No.
it was gonna.
Yeah, that it was going to end up taking the world by storm, quite literally
Right.
speaking. So you're in the classroom, you're doing, the class of one, and then you're trugging right along, right? And you graduate classroom. I guess that's the best way to
Yeah,
put
because
it.
you had to do. We had to go to the backup center for a day and do radio practicals, and you had to
Okay.
pass the radio practicals to be able to be done. I guess graduate from the
Yeah.
classroom.
Okay, so then you're done with that, and you're about to start OJT, on the job training, and then what?
Well, the very last day after I got my certificate that I was done from classroom, that same day was actually my wedding anniversary, and we were going to go out to dinner. But they just started shutting things down, so a lot of the restaurants and stuff were already closed. So
Okay.
on the next day, on March 18th, was my very first day on the job training on the floor when everything was shut down for sure.
So nationwide.
Yes.
Yeah, because I believe the South by Southwest event was the first major festival to kind of shut down in the country.
I remember that because I remember telling my family, no way, they're not closing South by. There is absolutely no way they're doing South by.
That
Nope,
makes the
not
city
gonna happen.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
I
There's
mean,
no way they're closing
surely
that.
not.
Yeah.
No way. And way.
Way.
They actually
Way
did
they
it.
did.
We're like, wait, what? And I don't know about anybody else, but I remember looking around going, did they really just?
And then, like, no traffic on the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
It felt
that's
like Austin from the
right.
90s. It was great.
That's right. It was, and during that time, we're going to work and there's nothing. So I know you and I know each other, me, you, and Gary, we all know each other and we're all colleagues, but I never thought about what that must have felt like for you when now you've gone through the process, you're in the house, you're on the team, you've done the first hurdle of classroom, now it's OJT, and everything shuts down. What goes through your head?
I don't think it really hit me until later on into my training where I thought when things kind of started picking up a little bit and it affected my speed, and then realizing these officers weren't allowed to do traffic stops.
Yeah.
There were a lot of calls, like the low priority calls that they wouldn't respond to. They would just give them a call. So that really, in the long run, hurt me with the speed.
Yeah.
And then just knowing what it's really like.
Okay. Wow. So, and our listeners by now should know I'm just raw. I don't hold anything back. So I know that as an industry, we struggle a lot with welcoming people in. We're really, really good at saying sayonara, see you later, bye, sorry it didn't work out. Would you say that not having the same training experience impacted how you were treated?
Oh, yes, 100%. And I felt like a lot of people after I was trained and didn't realize the hurdles
Yeah.
that I had to go through. I definitely felt judged,
Yeah.
like
Harshly.
I wasn't good enough.
Right.
There were one of our friends, and this was a year later, maybe a year or two later, where she was talking to the gentleman that she was training, and she looked over to me and she was telling him my experience and just said wonderful things about me, and just that meant so much to me.
Yeah.
That she understood and she saw it, and I never really talked to her about it, so she observed this, and yeah, it meant a lot to me.
So, for those listening, I mean, if you've been following the show and listening, you know Gary and I have talked at length about how long it takes to go through our training process. You know, it takes forever and a day to get hired. You have a very unique story because you're heard back the same day, I think, or the day after, which is unheard of in my experience. And so fast forward, you know, you've gone through all the things, and you didn't have the benefit of doing what most people do. Like we talk about how long it takes and how you've got classroom, then you've got 4 to 8 weeks, depending on what the circumstances are, for 911, and then you've got dispatch, which I think we said can be as long as 12 weeks.
Yeah, 8 to 12 weeks.
8 to 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. And 8 to 12 weeks of everything that is normal. Like you said, traffic stops, subject stops, all the things, the heavy duty call load, you know, the ups and downs. You did not get that benefit. So I know you said you didn't realize until things began to pick up what you missed. So would you say that up until that point you thought you were doing just fine?
I thought so. And I remember when I was in classroom training, and I think it was my very first day, the lieutenant was doing a tour with somebody, and he stepped into the room and explained to them, you know, what this was and how we go through classroom, then we go on the floor to train. And they had asked him, you know, what is the percentage of people that don't make it on the floor, on the job training? And I think he said about 60%. And to me, I thought, that is probably not good for me to hear right on my first day of training.
And you're a class of one.
Yes. But that made me really think, well, I am not going to be that 100% failure rate. So, so I never once, it was never an option to me to give up or not make it.
So your determination, I think it's just really good for people to hear that you had the mindset that you simply were not going to quit. So now fast forward, you're done with quote unquote OJT. You've done your QA. So actually, I want to back up a little bit. So your QA was not what you would expect, right? Because
No.
it was not, it was, so for anybody listening, for us, our QA process is 2 8-hour shifts of doing the work completely shadowed by your training operator, training officer, CTO person. So they don't interfere unless it is something that is just completely foreign to you. I don't know, a plane falls out of the sky or something crazy like that. And so you're just doing the job and you're trugging right along, right? And you don't know that you're not as prepared as maybe you should be, right?
Right. And then I kind of got the short end of the stick in phase 4 when I was just my very last week of phase 4. And then the next week it would be time to QA. And guess what we're dealing with citywide is riots and protests.
That's right.
And I think that Friday, Saturday night, I didn't handle the radio at all. The training manager had asked my trainer, why is that? And she said, look, I could hardly handle that much traffic. I wasn't about to let her do it, because we had a big mall in that sector, and it was overwhelming. And it was even overwhelming for that seasoned dispatcher.
It was overwhelming for pretty much everybody here, I think. I'd like to ask, so one of the things that's been difficult, I think, for everyone that works here is how much things changed. Like when COVID started, like every day we were getting new policies on how to handle A, B, and C, and especially like coming from your end, you've just come out of classroom training of 5 weeks, and now you're hitting OJT the day that everything starts to shut down. So pretty much as soon as you get out into like on the job training, everything that you've been trained for in the classroom is null and void, and you've got to kind of start again and try and learn as these things are actively changing every day. Like every day there's a new bulletin going out, a new policy on how to do this, what calls we go to, what calls we don't go to. How did you, I don't know, keep on top of all that? Because that's like, I remember for me, like it's hard to just remember like what do we go to, what do we not go to. And so how, like, I can't even imagine how difficult it would have been for you.
And it was. And for me, I think I understand the month of classroom training to learn the basics. But for me, no matter if I got every bit of knowledge I needed from classroom, and it was actually getting, when you're doing the job and you're learning the job, it's getting it from your head to your fingers. And that was the biggest struggle.
Yeah.
And so with all the new policies coming in, I think it helped being in training. I think it would have been a lot harder if I had been cut loose and then having to be responsible for remembering this. But I did have that trainer to help me and to help remind me.
Yeah.
But to be learning so much already and then have all this other stuff on top of it, it was very hard. But yeah, they helped me a lot.
I can't, and my brain is just, I'm remembering back to the riots and the protests left and right. Correct me if I'm wrong, that would have been the George Floyd situation?
Yeah, basically in your first year of working here, you went through COVID, you went through the riots, and you went through an ice storm. So you went through like the most difficult,
That's right.
Yes.
single year.
Snowmageddon.
Yeah.
It was.
And like, it's a lot.
Because
It's a lot.
what's funny is, my first day was February 18th. Then when that storm came in, I remember driving to work February 14th on a Sunday, and I had prepared a bag and stuff to stay at work for at least 2 days. I ended up staying here until that Thursday. In the meantime, I had a birthday that I was stuck here for.
What?
And I do believe I was able to leave on my day off. And I'm like, I am not staying here for my weekend.
Oh, wow.
And it was snowing when I was leaving.
To anybody listening in the north, you're like, yeah, it's snowing. It's not a big deal. In Central Texas, like, we do not own a snowplow down here.
No, we don't do that.
That's not what we do.
Not at all.
And so it was massive. It was a
Hence
massive issue.
hence the name Snowmageddon. And probably when winter-ish rolls around again, we have an episode called Snowmageddon that's just kind of in the hopper waiting. It would be a little foolish to do it right now, but just know, keep listening. Snowmageddon is coming.
Oh, and they
But I
said
can't
it's
even
going to
imagine.
be, it's like, I don't imagine us having another one of those type of snowmageddons in our lifetime. I don't think. I
If
think
that
it was
happens,
definitely
Sherree, I'm
Central-
coming for you. Just
No,
so
it's my fault.
you know.
You jinxed us.
That's right up there with not saying it's slow
Yes.
or it's quiet. You don't say those things. So
And we had to stay. Luckily, we were provided cots and blankets and pillows, and then I had to stay in a training room with other people.
wow.
And my father, when I told my father, that I was at work. I was stuck at work for 4 days. And he said, "Where are you sleeping?" I said, "Well, I'm sleeping in a training room with a cot and everything." And he says, "It better not be co-ed." I told him, "Yeah, I am an adult, and there are cameras everywhere."
That's amazing.
You must be thinking to yourself, like, man, what career have I gotten into?
No
This is the
kidding.
first year.
No kidding.
That's just amazing to me. So, wow, I didn't even think about that, Gary. You're right. So you got through COVID, riots, Snowmageddon, all within the first year. That is absolutely insane. So things start picking up, and you start realizing that you got the short end of the stick
Yes.
through no fault of your own, and not even through no action of the agency itself. It was just a bad hand
It sure was.
that you were dealt. So now you're coming out of this, and I know you said you had kind of made up your mind early on that you were not going to be that 100% failure rate statistic. But now things are picking up, and you're realizing my skill set is not where it should be.
Right.
What keeps you coming back? Because we've already established that you've got colleagues. Let's just be realistic. This is the nature of the beast in this environment. We are not as nurturing or supportive as we should be,
Right.
given that we have this title of first responders. We're caregivers, right, and caretakers, just in our work. But when you turn it inward, that's not what we do. What kind of things did you deal with?
I remember because training, you have to go, your first phase is the day shift, so it's a little bit slower, so you can learn. And then you go to the evenings, and then I went to nights at the later part of my training. And on my evenings, that reality was setting in. We were on a big sector, more busier sector, and we had some pretty high priority calls.
Yeah.
That I think even somebody hit his vehicle on purpose, and
Wow.
and I was working this, and I had gone outside on my break. I'd gone out, and I said, "Please just give me a sign not to give up." And at that very second, a butterfly landed at my foot. And so I knew, okay, I'm going to keep on going on. But that was the only time I questioned. I'm like, do I need to give up? And that butterfly, to me, that was my grandmother. I always
Okay.
associated her with butterflies. And so I told my grandma, "Okay, Grandma, I'm going to keep on going." So, and you're right, it's not. I don't understand. I think the experience of what I went through and the way that people treated me, and I knew the way they were looking at me, it has made me, I'm very nice and caring anyhow.
Yes,
but-
people. Yes, she is.
So I definitely step it up with the new people and
Wow.
let them know, just so that they, even if maybe I'm not able to approach them, and have a conversation with them, I'm just kind and approachable.
And I can absolutely see that. I don't think that anybody that knows you would argue that point. So you are now, 4.5 years later, you are a CTO.
Yes.
What made you do that? What made you make that
I
decision?
need more punishment in this
I
job.
know.
And so I think last summer, the training team were needing trainers, CTOs. And I told the training team that I would try it out. And I think that I wanted to give somebody maybe a different experience than what I had. I know we've got some good CTOs now. A lot of these people that made me feel like I wasn't worthy of being here, they're not here anymore. I wanted to make sure people coming in were having a good experience.
Yeah.
Didn't go through what I did. And in fact, one of the ladies that I trained told me that I was her favorite.
Nice.
And I think it was just the kindness.
Well, let me ask you this. I think a lot of people that train in this profession kind of have the mentality or outset that like you need to, bleed on the training field to laugh on the battlefield kind of, where if we make training really challenging, then you're going to come out of the crucible as a better dispatcher on the other end. Now, I think that, you certainly need to still be positive with your trainees and, uplift them and guide them. But so you're not saying like make training easier, but you're saying don't lose that cheerleader hat of yours.
Yeah, and I had a trainer that said, Sherree, do you, in a very rude tone of voice, Sherree, do you even comprehend what you're reading? And I wanted to make sure this wasn't going to happen with the few people that I can train. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah.
And I did at the end when we rate or
do your evaluation.
Evaluation of your trainer. I did mention that. Mm-hmm. And she was one that I knew she didn't think I was worthy. But that's really not what pushed me.
Yeah, because I was going to say.
It was me, because I knew I was going to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like with the people that I had trained, I think one of them had said to somebody else that she felt like Sherree was frustrated with her. But, and I think that's okay.
Yeah. But I think that's human nature because it's not easy.
No, it's not. But I'm just very proud that I'm at a stage where I can train and I'm confident in training.
I agree 100% because you and I have had a few conversations about training and sticking with it because I really believe that your story is one that is, if anybody can press through an uphill battle to come out on the other side, it's absolutely you. And when I think about people who are here and they're like, I can't do it, I think, you need to sit down and talk to Sherree because that was just, it was just an insane roller coaster.
And I do want to mention the last part of my training said, Sherree, I think you're exactly where you need to be. And her personality is a lot like me.
Yeah.
And I already knew I could do it, but she definitely gave me that boost.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I can do it.
And that is so important because people don't realize how much the CTO can pour into another person. Because if you had people on the floor who were making you feel like maybe you weren't worthy. You probably had some of your own doubts, right? I mean, you were determined, but you're human.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking around and you're realizing that this is not exactly how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You probably didn't know what it was supposed to be, but you know that this was not what it was supposed to be. So you need that. You need that person that is going to be your cheerleader, that's going to be what I like to call the stander in front of the train, which is that person that stands in between success and whatever else might threaten that success. So now you're a CTO. You are pouring into other people. Now, what do you think is the next challenge in this arena for you? Are you happy doing what you're doing?
Yes.
No regrets?
No regrets. No, I absolutely love it. And I'm so thankful that I thought of this career, and I just plan on being here until it's time to retire. And night shift, I love night shift. I know a lot of people tell my family, it's like, oh, she must be miserable. Oh, no, she's a weirdo. She loves it.
Vampire. Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, it's just like, I think it's a really impressive and inspiring story because if if you were to look at you on paper as, a dispatch trainee coming in, sort of like you've already had a career. So this isn't like, your first career. You've got a very sweet personality, very welcoming and opening personality.
Yep.
And you've also started training. Your first year was the most unprecedented year that we've probably ever had.
Wow.
Like that was a deck that was really stacked against you. Yes. And you were able to, overcome that. And now you're training other people. And I really think that you can attribute that not only to your trainers that the ones that helped you and gave you guidance, but really to that spark within you that pushed you to keep succeeding, that butterfly.
Yes, yes. And I think even up to the ice storm and the snowstorm, I don't feel like we were doing many normal things, the traffic stops.
No.
And so I remember working those nights where the reality set in. I think it had already set in a little bit, but it really hit me when you have officers that are going out on these vehicles that are stuck on the overpasses, the on-ramps, and they're coming over the radio hollering, "I need somebody here quick. Before I get hit, I almost got hit."
Yeah.
And not only that, we were losing officers. They were leaving. We had low staff.
Yeah.
So.
And we had never, and actually, you're right. Speaking of the staff, I had never seen our staffing dip
No.
to the place where we eventually ended up and only just recently began to truly recover. I think it all started right around
The day we hired you. No.
Yes, I think so.
Wow.
But really, yeah. I mean, not that you caused any of it, but it's been a really rough patch since you started.
Yes, and you were starting on.
That may not have come out right,
No,
but
I understand.
you've come through it.
Yes, and then even up until now, where our staffing inside on the floor is so low, and they've had to make changes that they normally would never do, like the patching of radios.
That's true.
To help relieve some of the overtime.
It was just a really, you're right, Gary. Sherree, you might have been a little bit of a jinx there.
so.
I'm just saying, because it all went downhill when you got here. It just went sideways from there. It ain't been right since. No, I'm teasing. No, seriously, it is. But I agree with Gary. It is an incredibly inspiring story. I was there. I've seen it up close and personal. We've even done bingo together. Mm-hmm. So I've heard a lot of your thoughts and ideas about what was going on with you. And I just think that if anybody is listening to this, can you imagine a year of trying to learn this job, whether you be a radio person or if you're taking 911 calls? Imagine the day you start, the country shuts down.
The world.
Yes.
The world, really. Yeah, you're right. And then and everything that you should have happening in order to prepare you to be on your own is not happening. And then you talk about digging deep for that, that intrinsic motivator that you have to have. I think everybody should have it, because money is not going to do it when you're trying to learn this.
No.
And going through all of those different obstacles, and here you are.
Yeah, and even just the hiring process was hard.
Yeah.
And you had so many things that you had to do, and that was one thing that motivated me to keep going is, it's going to take 15 plus years to make up for how hard it was to get onto the city.
That's so true.
But no, there was never once a thought. It wasn't an option to quit. It wasn't an option that I was going to fail the QA.
Right.
I even spoke with the training manager, who absolutely understood what the card that I was dealt with, the writing, with it being at my very last week. Because that very last week in training, you're touching up, like you said, your CTO is supposed to kind of sit back and let you handle it all, unless it's some critical incident that you've never dealt with before.
Yeah.
And then we're getting prepared for that QA.
Yeah. So we're talking about your getting ready for that QA, and you were saying that you talked to the training manager, and you mentioned telling us that she had to go to bat for you because you had such just a bum hand dealt to you.
Yes.
So typically we only have one extension per phase of training, phases 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think you can get one
Yeah.
each, right? So, and it would have to be an extraordinary set of circumstances to cause our training team, training supervisor, training manager, or even a CTO to go and ask for an extension within the same phase. So I think if I'm remembering right, you had that happen, right? She asked she had to go spend some of her capital to get you another extension.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, she had to go up to the lieutenant. And to make sure that we can have another extension, the second extension in the same phase.
Okay.
And she brought to the lieutenant's attention, with COVID and the protests, I had some challenges that a lot of others never dealt with.
Right. Yeah, and it wasn't a lack of skills. And it wasn't that you weren't grasping it.
Right.
It wasn't any of those things. It was nothing that you could normally point to and say, extraordinary circumstance.
Right, and she told me, she said, I remember her telling me, she said, I'm doing this for you because I believe in you. I know you can do this.
Wow.
I see that you're an excellent employee and you work hard and you always show up.
You just kept showing up. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times I've said that to trainees through the years. Just keep coming back.
Yes, and that is so true. Come back every single day. Even when you want to give up, just keep coming. I feel like every day, obviously every day is different. And I remember one day going on a break and I ran into Gary. Oh, Sherree, how you doing? Gary, I did good yesterday and today I took 2 steps back. And he said, well, yeah, that's going to happen.
That sounds like Gary.
Yes. Yeah, so just because today didn't go well, and it's just waiting for all your knowledge and everything that you've learned to kind of click. And in the beginning of this, I didn't get the chance for it to click.
Well said.
I think that with the traffic stops, because one of the biggest struggles is the addresses, getting them geo-verified. And as you're training, you're going to different sectors throughout the city. So you've got so many different highways. And that was my biggest struggle after I got out of training. I don't remember at what point they were picking up on the traffic stops, but just those locations, just something that was so simple that I didn't get practice with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the best way to put it. You did not get the practice that an average trainee would get. It would be hours upon hours. Do you know off the top of your head how many hours is it?
OJT?
Yeah.
It's 8 weeks times 4, so
Show off.
320 hours to 480.
Oh, yeah.
So while you may have gotten that as far as the numbers, you didn't get the repetition.
Right. And that is definitely one thing that one of the training managers had said from the beginning is practice. And using that word practice really kept me going. But in so many circumstances, I didn't have that practice.
Yeah.
And one thing that was amazing to me is learning everything, like I said earlier, and you're getting it from your head to your fingers. It's like you know how to do it.
Yeah.
I would hesitate in the beginning on the radio.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with my mom, and we both agree, I am not shy. I don't know why I'm being shy on the radio.
That's because you didn't get the practice.
Yeah.
You didn't get the hours upon hours on end of broadcasting, reading calls on the fly, condensing information, and putting it out. You didn't get it not the same way that the average person gets it.
And for example, one thing that even now I don't have a lot of practice with is preempting units off lower priority calls to go to higher priority calls.
So managing your call load.
Yeah, because we don't have enough officers. So it's usually just going straight to checking your surrounding sectors and then going on to citywide to get those units. I don't do that very often. I don't have to preempt very often because we don't have officers.
So the challenge continues.
Yeah. one thing about this job that I realized was making the same mistake more than once. In my experience throughout my life, you make a mistake and you learn from it, you don't do it again. And it still baffles my mind how you can make the same mistakes multiple times.
I don't know if I'd say making the same mistake. I would say more like when you're studying math, you do 100 different practice equations, like trying to learn the same principle: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and each one is kind of building more towards having that knowledge, that fundamental understanding of whatever the subject is. You're not making a mistake when you get the wrong answer, but you see like, okay, I'm adding pieces to this puzzle to try and understand that. Or if like you're making a drawing, you'll make a sketch of it first and then put down heavier pen. I'm not an artist, I don't know, but I've seen I've seen Bob Ross do stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that.
So, it's not, they're happy little accidents, as Bob Ross would say.
That's awesome.
And that's one thing.
What a good segue.
That's a good one.
One thing that really took me by surprise about how I handled everything is if I made a mistake, or even on the radio, if I said something silly. Like I think one time they said in the call text, it said, the suspect is wearing a hoodie. And I said, the suspect is wearing a Huggy. Like a Huggy diaper.
Oh, wow.
And I just kept on going. And if I would make silly mistakes like that or say something silly, I would go back at home and on the scanner app, I would go back to the archives and find and hope that traffic made it on the scanner and then record it and save it for later.
So you can laugh at yourself.
And it never bothered me if an officer snapped at me, or got angry. You can hear it on the radio at times.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often, but if they were just frustrated, I just kept going. I just let it roll off my back. And that is not who I was even 10 years ago. So I feel like this job I don't think I could have done this job as well or made it through when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
But as I'm getting older, things bother me less and less. So I think maybe that was benefit. And I heard from several people when I was training that people that come in after they're 40, in their 40s, they seem to struggle a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that might be a factor. I don't think so, though. I think being older was beneficial for me.
Yeah. To be able to, I would say, be able to press through the negativity that you experience, the judgment.
Yes.
And people deciding without knowing your whole story, remember? So a lot of these people, met you when you were 2 years in and maybe not as quick on the draw as someone would be if they had gotten a normal shake or had been dealt a normal hand in training. They didn't know the story.
Yes.
They didn't realize the uphill battle that it was. And so they would be judgmental and sometimes very vocal in their judgment. In your earlier years, 20s, you probably would have taken that a lot more to heart.
Yes.
And you may have said, you know what, I can't, throw your hands up and
No, I
roll
wouldn't have
out.
dealt with that. But now I feel like I'm more stubborn, and I don't care what they think. I don't think it's I'm going to show you. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with them. It's
Right.
just, this is what I want, and I'm going to do it. I don't care what anyone thinks. And I feel like that judgment did last for well over a year because
Yeah.
those same people were still here. And I feel like a couple classes after me, there was one person coming in. I mean, we were just trickling in. It was
Yeah.
like one person here, one person there.
It was rough.
So the training that people are getting now, I am envious of because they're going straight into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had like the most difficult experience of anyone I think that has ever worked here.
At least here. I'm sure there are others around, other
Yeah.
agencies can probably say the same
Like-
thing, but you're the only one we know.
Yeah, and like really, you should feel very proud that you got through that, because that was a hell of a time.
Oh, it was.
It was rough. It was rough.
You know, we were bleeding people off left and right from
Yeah.
both patrol and, like, you know,
Yeah.
communications.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as you said, they were just trickling in, maybe one class every, you know, couple of months. So, and then policies were changing all the time, and then massive chaotic events,
Yes.
like blackouts across the whole state, people like burning their furniture inside of their apartment complexes, like rioting in the streets,
just
dogs and
awful.
cats living together, mass hysteria.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh! What is that? Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so I
mean-
think you should feel proud of yourself for that.
I don't know what it is normally, but it was over a year after being cut loose that I had a pursuit. Mm-hmm. I feel like
That
that
is not normal.
That's not normal either. It was over a year.
Not
for
in
my first
Austin,
pursuit.
no.
You know, when I used to train people, I would set up mock pursuits for, like, so the trainee wouldn't know about it, but
Yeah.
all the units would like go
I used to
around
do
to
that
like,
too.
you know, and they're going to pretend to pursue, and
Yeah.
it would be good training. But yeah, again, you traffic stops, pursuits, all these.
None of those
Bread
things
and
were
butter things.
happening. It would have been so obvious that it was a setup in your case, because
Yeah.
literally, I remember that. I remember being on night shift, and there would be, you could go 30, 45 minutes without a single transmission, and that is not normal.
Oh yes. That was insane. But see, I didn't know.
You didn't know
I
that
just
that
didn't
was not
know.
normal. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So let me ask you this: now that you've had, you know, 4.5 years or so of doing the job, we kind of talked about like a plane falling out of the sky earlier. If that happened, how do you feel like you'd be confident in your abilities to handle that, even though there's no policy procedure on that? You know, it thankfully doesn't happen very often.
Oh yes, 100%. I was here a little over a year.
Has it really been that long?
Yeah, it was in July, the end of July 2021. And I lost an officer in a car accident. That, you can't get anything worse than that.
No.
So, and that makes me feel like I've lost an officer on my time. I feel like I can handle anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was, it wasn't anything that he had keyed up and said he had a collision. This was calls coming in and reading these calls, that call, and it's saying it's an APD officer, and then and giving us the vehicle number
Yeah.
to realize that that's how we found out. Yeah, so I feel like I can handle anything after that.
I'm with you on that.
After I was only like Erica says, a baby dispatcher, just
really-
a baby dispatcher dealing with that.
We worked that together.
And we did.
Kind of.
Yeah, she was my backup. She would pull the radio for me and was really there for me.
Yeah. We have history and bingo.
And bingo.
And I think maybe it's just because you're a very modest person in general that maybe most people don't kind of like see all of these achievements and all these struggles that you've had to kind of go through, because you don't really wear them on your sleeve very often.
You
No.
know, walk around saying, I made it through this, that, and the other.
So I'm glad we could introduce all this to the world.
Yes. And I remember they given me and Erica some time off after the accident, and I really felt like the upper management and even maybe my coworkers were worried that I wasn't going to come back. And I kind of got that feeling, but I'm like, nope, I'm going to keep on going.
I guess I didn't think that because we were in contact. So I knew that wasn't going to be enough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can imagine on the outside looking in.
I didn't think you were going to come back.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah. Because I was like, you've had like struggle after
True.
struggle. And
That's
I'm like,
true.
Yes.
this is like
Icing
a
on the
capstone.
cake, yeah.
So I'm very glad that you did, because that's hard to go through.
It was very hard. I talked to my dad about it, and he said, "You're a Treadwell. We're strong." And so I just kept thinking that I'm a Treadwell. I'm strong, because the Treadwell is my cousin that I'll watch graduate and become a DPS officer or a DPS
Nice.
trooper.
The one that started the whole thing.
Yes, and and then 7 months later, I lose my daddy. It's always like, it's just been one thing after another since I've been here.
Yet you walk in here, and if you have never met Sherree, you would never guess.
Yeah. I feel connected to him when I'm in this building because he was part of the construction of this building back in 2003.
What?
That's right. Yeah, when I called him and told him I had the interview, he says, "That's not behind the old airport, is it?" I said, "It is." He said, "Well, I did the HVAC sheet metal in that building."
Huh.
And so I told myself, well, that's a sign.
Small world, huh?
Isn't it?
I took that as a sign. Oh, it's mine. I got it. I know I got the job.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I would just like to say thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of that. I mean, we know, I knew a lot of, I knew all of this, but I think if there is a person who is not in the industry yet and is thinking about it and wondering if they have what it takes to press in order to come out on the other side, then you're the blueprint for that.
Thank you.
And I absolutely admire your just determination pressing through, because that was an ugly hand.
I was reading through my journal that they want us to keep during training, and I had mentioned, what Gary said about it's okay to take 2 steps back. It's normal. And then I had also mentioned, and I didn't really know Erica, and I was like, I just love Erica so much. She's so positive and uplifting, and I just appreciate how you guys really look after us newbies and make sure. One time you had said, "I heard that you had a hard night last night." This is after I was cut loose, and then and I had said, "I sure did," and you just used your fingers and showed me this little bit of space and said, "You've been here this long," and just people to know that these little words really mean a lot and keep pushing you on.
Yeah. Wow. I appreciate that. We actually make a difference every now and then.
No,
Y'all both
believe
do.
that or not.
Shocking.
Yes.
Shocking.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really happy that you came on. I think you have a really great story to share, and I'm glad that you kind of got to get it out there because, as I said, you're very modest and humble about a lot of your achievements. So I think it's good to highlight those, especially went on to become a CTO yourself to train others and hopefully, inspire them and provide them the guidance and support that you had
Yes.
throughout your career.
Yes.
And if we've got any newbies listening right now, you can do this.
Oh,
You
yes.
can do it. Keep pressing.
Or anyone thinking about joining the industry.
That too.
It is definitely rewarding.
Yeah. There's nothing else for me, so I'm good. I mean, I'm career-wise, I enjoy teaching off to the side, 911 stuff, but this is the career. It's not just a job. Mm-hmm. I think we're all the same boat.
Oh,
with
yeah.
that.
It's definitely a career.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. From all of us at Lifeline 911 Podcast, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911 Podcast. If you have any questions about the topics we discussed today, or if there's something specific you'd like us to cover in a future episode, send us your questions at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. Stay safe out there. Until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.